The morning of January 1st, 2025, Lucknow. A man casually walked into a Lucknow police station, and the police were not at all ready to digest whatever he was going to say next. He wasn't crying, he wasn't trembling, he wasn't even sorry. He simply said in a calm and cold voice, "I killed my family." At first, the officers laughed. They thought it was some twisted joke. Then, they saw the bloodstain on his pants. Then, they realized the horror, that the names he uttered, his father, his mother, his 3 sisters, were really dead. But the most terrifying part? No one knew why. This is the horrifying story of Mohammad Arshad, and you are watching Criminally Curious. In this video, let's investigate the case from the beginning. Arshad was only 24 and came from a family that had seen its fair share of hardship. Born in Agra, he was used to moving around as his father, Mohammad Badar, worked tirelessly to provide for them. The family never stayed in one place for too long, always chasing the next opportunity, whether it was in Sambal or Delhi. His father wasn't a lazy man. In fact, he worked multiple jobs, sometimes a street vendor, sometimes in a factory, just to ensure there was food on the table. But there was something dark about him, something that Arshad grew up seeing and feeling, something that was impossible to ignore. See, Badar wasn't just a hard-working man, he was a violent one. He regularly abused his wife, Arshad's mother, Asma. It was part of the routine, an ongoing cycle of abuse that Arshad had witnessed his whole life. Watching his father hit his mother wasn't something that Arshad could easily forget. And as the years passed, something inside him started to change. Instead of feeling repelled by his father's actions, Arshad began to understand them. Not in a way that justified them, but in a way that made him believe that maybe this was the only way to truly control the people around him. This is called human conditioning. The more we grow up, the more impossible it becomes to change this conditioning of us. So, Arshad started to pick up where his father had left off. He also became abusive. His sisters weren't safe, his mother wasn't safe. He didn't see anything wrong with it. He began to demand obedience, complete control. For example, his sisters were no longer allowed to talk to anyone outside the house. His mother became a prisoner of the walls around her, forbidden from interacting with neighbors or family. And with each passing day, Arshad's grip tightened. He grew more and more stubborn, more obsessed with having everything his way. From anyone around him, he wanted nothing but complete submission. And if someone crossed him, there was no telling how far he would go to put them back in their place. But then, on the night of December 31st, 2024, something snapped. Arshad had pushed his family to the edge for years, and they were done. They were tired of the fear, tired of the control, and tired of the abuse. They had finally started to fight back. But Arshad couldn't bear with that. His rage boiled over, and in a fit of violent madness, he killed them. His father, his mother, his 3 sisters, all 5 of them were gone. He did what he thought was necessary to reassert his dominance, to show everyone that he was in control. Then, he walked into the station, but did he really surrender, or was there something more behind that calm confession? For years, Arshad's family believed his rage was just immaturity, something he'd grow out of. But that was the biggest mistake they could have made. When Arshad grew older, his family decided to take a huge step, something they thought would finally bring stability, buying a piece of land in Agra and building their own home. They even had a shop next door to make ends meet, but the moment they moved in, they realized something wasn't right. It wasn't just Arshad's behavior that was a problem. His father, who had always been a steady provider, started becoming just as difficult. The 2 of them? They didn't just have a few petty fights, they started to tear down the entire neighborhood. Every other day, they were either shouting at someone or getting into a physical fight. But it didn't stop there. The real shock came when they decided that throwing stones at their enemies from their terrace was their way of getting back at them. It was petty, childish, and terrifying. You can imagine the frustration of the neighbors. They started avoiding the house, walking across the street just to avoid the stares, the harsh words. And still, Arshad's family stuck by him. They kept telling themselves he'll change. They kept waiting for the day he'd grow up and become a man. Instead, they doubled down on their belief that marriage would fix everything. So, in July 2019, they arranged his marriage to a girl named Chandni. But it is not rational that a wife would make Arshad take life seriously. Instead, she'll be another victim of his dominance. And within weeks of their marriage, the truth was hard to ignore. Arshad wasn't just a troubled man, he was a monster in the making. The same anger, the same violence he showed to others now had a new target: his wife. Chandni was trapped in a nightmare. He began hitting her, just like he had hit the women in his house before. And then, just 2 months into the marriage, she did the unthinkable. She filed for divorce. The family was shattered. They couldn't understand it. This was supposed to be their salvation. Instead, their hopes, their dreams for Arshad, they were crumbling right before their eyes. But what hurt even more than the divorce was Arshad's reaction. His behavior went from bad to worse. He didn't just sulk or cry. He became violent, angrier, uncontrollable. But the striking part was when he raised his hand to his father. That was the breaking point. In the early months of 2024, after years of trying to fix the damage, his father finally did something drastic. He wrote a will, which was more like a statement, a declaration. His entire property would be divided equally among his daughters. But Arshad? He was completely cut off. He completely refused to give anything to Arshad. But after that, the family had to ask themselves, what was Arshad capable of next? What would a man like him do when he had nothing left to lose? Arshad had always believed the family property was his by right. After all, that's how things were done. The sons inherited everything. But when he found out his father had secretly cut a deal behind his back, his anger exploded. It wasn't just disappointment or betrayal he felt. As a result, in a moment, he was on his father with a violence no one had ever seen before. But that wasn't enough for Arshad. His anger didn't just want to hurt, it wanted to destroy. So, he dragged his father out to the terrace, and then, without a second thought, he hung him upside down from the railing. Just imagine a helpless father dangling in the air like some kind of punishment, all because his own son wanted control. But this wasn't a momentary lapse. Fear ruled the family now, not love. When this happens, the whole house becomes a prison. Then came the morning of December 18th, 2024. Arshad, as usual, got into an argument with their neighbor. But this time, something felt off. The argument was just the tip of the iceberg, a routine thing, like any other day. But that evening, something changed. The family packed up in a frenzy as if they were running from something, or to something. And they left everything behind. Clothes, slippers, small, odd things that you wouldn't just forget in the rush. But where were they going, and why so urgently? The answers started to unfold as they traveled, first to Ajmer, then to Jaipur. Nothing seemed out of place at first. A family on a trip, visiting tourist spots, taking photos, living what seemed like a normal vacation. But if you looked closer, you could feel the tension in the air. Arshad wasn't angry. In fact, he was calm. So much so that it felt unnatural, like the calm before the storm. But was he pretending to be normal? Or was this just part of some bigger game? The days passed, and on December 30th, they found themselves in Lucknow. They checked into a hotel, Hotel Sarnjeet, and for the next 2 days, they toured the city. Everything seemed too perfect or too staged. But it wasn't until December 31st that the true nature of their trip was revealed. The family sat down to a meal, drinking and eating together, as families often do on New Year's Eve. But this was no ordinary celebration. Arshad went to the lengths of forcing his mother and sisters to drink. At first, they refused, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. Slowly, under his intense pressure, they drank. And that's when the calmness turned into something else, a sense of inevitability, like everything was building to something. Somehow, it felt like Arshad was waiting for the perfect moment. It wasn't just a simple family gathering. At exactly 2 a.m., when the world was asleep, Arshad and his father started putting their plan into motion. It all started with a single, horrifying moment. First, Arshad murdered his own mother, but it wasn't just a crime of passion. It was cold, calculated, and brutal. The worst part? He did it right in front of his sisters while they were asleep. But how did Arshad manage to kill his mother without a single sound escaping? The answer lies in the chilling way he and his father executed the plan. They took one end of Arshad's mother's dupatta and shoved it into her mouth, making sure she couldn't scream. Then, with the other end, they strangled her. Slowly, methodically, until her body went limp. She fought, tried to save herself, but she was no match for the force they exerted. Even the daughters, all sleeping together, didn't hear a thing. But Arshad's bloodlust didn't stop there. Next, he turned on his sisters, and this time he had a surgical blade. He had bought this online, searching for the perfect tool to carry out his evil deed. He didn't need to use it for a clean, quick kill. Instead, he wanted them to suffer. Arshad and his father sliced the veins on the arms of Alshia, Aqsa, and Rahmin. The pain was excruciating. They twisted and writhed in agony, but they couldn't scream. Cloth had been shoved into their mouths to silence them, and being drunk from the alcohol, they couldn't even fight back. Arshad and his father were relentless. They watched as life slowly drained from their bodies, and the sisters' screams were nothing but muffled whimpers. But the horror didn't end there. The youngest of them all, little Aliyah, just 9 years old, was next. And how did they kill her? Strangulation, just like her mother. So, who would do such a thing? Why would anyone go this far? It's a question that haunts everyone who hears this story. But there's something even more twisted that followed the murders. After killing his entire family, Arshad made a video. It was a 7-minute confession, or perhaps an attempt to clear his conscience. In the video, he tried to pin the blame on his neighbors, claiming he did it because he was fed up. He even dared to film his father committing the final murder, the killing of little Aliyah. And when the video ended, Arshad said something chilling. Maybe by morning, I won't be alive. But no one in the hotel knew a thing. No one had any idea that the horrors unfolding in one room were happening just under their noses. The most mind-boggling part of this whole thing is what Arshad did next. After filming the video, he uploaded it to social media. But that wasn't enough. At 4:30 a.m., after dropping his father at the railway station, Arshad walked straight into a police station without a care in the world and surrendered. The plan was that his father would throw himself in front of a train, and Arshad will be the only person left alive in the family to tell the story to cops. But little did Arshad know that, in the end, he will also get an unexpected shock from his father. Just keep watching, and we will come to that point soon. So, when Arshad finally reached police station in the morning, the cops didn't believe his story at first. But then Arshad showed them the bloodstains on his clothes, and that's when they realized this wasn't some sick joke. They took him back to the hotel, where they found the 5 bodies, all lying together on the same bed, covered with a blanket. There were bottles of alcohol everywhere, evidence of the celebration that had preceded the killings. The police collected the surgical blade, the mobile phones, and the dupattas. Everything that tied Arshad to the crime. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Arshad, after being arrested, acted like nothing had happened. When he got to jail, he didn't sit there remorseful, begging for forgiveness. Instead, he asked for food. And then, after sleeping it off, his first words were, "How many views did my video get?" The sheer indifference, the utter lack of any real guilt or remorse, a perfect monster. So, what does this say about Arshad? What kind of person is he really? And why did he do it? What drove him to commit such unimaginable acts? The answer is something only he knows, and that's the scariest thought of all. When the police sat him down for questioning, they got lies, one after another. He kept spinning wild stories. At first, he blamed his own family, calling them a burden, saying they'd pushed him to the edge. But then, the story started changing. Suddenly, the entire neighborhood became the villain. According to Arshad, it was the neighbors who'd driven him to this. They'd been tormenting his family for years, trying to take their home away, making their lives miserable. The strangest part? Arshad claimed they had even been threatening to kill them. And then, the biggest twist? He said his family had wanted to convert to Hinduism just to escape the constant abuse. He even talked about how they had been trying to build a temple, but the neighbors kept blocking them, threatening death if they went ahead with it. Now, if you don't have any prior idea about this communal feud in India, let me tell you about it. Some feuds in the world run so deep and go so far back that they seem impossible to resolve. Like those between Palestine and Israel, Russia and the US, North Korea and South Korea, China and Taiwan, Saudi Arabia and Iran, or India and Pakistan. In India, there are two major communities, Hindus and Muslims. The tension between them is deeply rooted and can be triggered at any time, in any place, often over the smallest issues. It's a highly sensitive and common occurrence. This feud dates back centuries, making it incredibly complex and difficult to resolve. So, you can understand how sensitive it could be if people got to know that Arshad's family was pressured to take Hinduism. It could even start a communal riot, taking many lives of both Hindus and Muslims. But anyway, the police weren't believing Arshad's lies. They went to the neighborhood, talked to the people who lived next door, and what they found turned Arshad's entire story upside down. Instead of backing up his claims, the neighbors spoke of hearing Arshad shouting threats from his own house. "I'll kill everyone," they said he would scream. It wasn't the neighbors harassing him. It was Arshad himself who had been making threats for a long time. Neighbors even reported hearing the sounds of knives and weapons. They would hear him shout, then lock the gate, trapping anyone who tried to step in. When the police asked about this, the neighbors hesitated, fear written all over their faces. No one dared to confront Arshad, and no one dared to get too close. Then, the police discovered something even darker. They searched through the phones Arshad had left behind in the hotel room, and what they found sent chills down their spines. 2 phones belonged to Arshad and his father. But it wasn't just the phone numbers that were alarming, it was the search history. On one of the phones, they found searches for things like how to strangle, cutting throats, and buy surgical blades online. So, Arshad had planned this murder for months. But when Arshad finally admitted it, it was a chilling revelation. He confessed that the murders had been planned long before they even left for Jaipur. Originally, he had intended to kill the women of his family there by slipping sleeping pills into their drinks. But something had stopped him. Maybe it was the timing, or maybe it was just luck. Whatever the reason, he didn't go through with it in Jaipur. But when they got to Lucknow, that was when he made his move. Instead of the sleeping pills, he used alcohol to knock them out, and that's when it all happened. But Arshad had no idea that his father wasn't dead. He thought his father had taken his own life at the railway station. That was the plan. Except it wasn't. As the police dug deeper, something else came to light. Arshad's father had been on the run ever since the murders. He had left his phone behind in a hotel room to avoid being traced. The last sighting of him was in Kanpur, but by the time the police got there, he was gone. And just like that, Arshad's entire world flipped again. He was no longer just a suspect. He was now in the dark, desperate for answers himself. The police launched an all-out search, expanding their efforts across the country. They checked every possible place: Kanpur, Agra, Ajmer, Sambal. They circulated his picture on social media, offering a reward. But what if Arshad's father wasn't the only one running? What if Arshad was also hiding something even darker, something bigger? What was really going on here, and where did it all lead? The questions kept piling up, and just when you thought you had the answers, another layer of mystery would unfold. Arshad had his reasons to kill his family, though it was all lies. But Badar, his father, also killed his entire family. And for what? You won't believe the twisted reason he gave when the police finally caught him. It all started when he decided to end his life. The day he murdered his wife and daughters, he didn't just kill them, He killed any chance of a normal life for himself, too. He had a plan. He went to the railway station in Lucknow, ready to throw himself in front of a train. But when the moment came, he couldn't do it. Instead, he disappeared into the city, wearing a monkey cap to hide his face. For days, he walked under the harsh sun, wandering the streets of Lucknow as though the world had forgotten him. At night, he'd vanish again, jumping on buses or trains to some distant village, staying just one step ahead of anyone who might recognize him. His face was hidden, and for days, no one knew who he was or where he'd gone. Initially, he thought Arshad, his son, might have killed himself too, because again, that was the plan. But when he found out Arshad had surrendered to the police, Badar's thoughts shifted. He needed a lawyer. He needed to find a way to get his son out on bail. So he went to Agra, searching for legal help, but even there, his luck ran out. The lawyer refused to take his case. His plan was crumbling. He tried to get his relatives involved, but he knew the police were closing in and he couldn't risk being caught. He kept up with the news, using the papers to stay one step ahead. So, Badar did what any man in his situation might do. He fled to Nepal, thinking it was his only shot at escaping. He stayed hidden for a week, believing the chaos had died down. But when he returned to Lucknow, something changed. A 25,000 rupees reward had been announced for information leading to his arrest. And that's when Badar realized that he wasn't just a man on the run anymore. He was a hunted animal. He had to move fast, but before he could even make his next move, it was over. An army man, of all people, recognized him. One tip-off, and within moments the police were on his tail and they caught him in no time. And when the police interrogated him, he dropped a bombshell. Why did he kill his family? The answer was so shocking that it almost didn't make sense. Badar claimed he killed his wife and his daughters, all to get revenge on his neighbors in Agra. Did it make any sense? The man had murdered his family to take down a few people he despised. He'd been willing to sacrifice everything for it, including his own flesh and blood. On the other hand, as the case continued to unfold, the media did what they do best: twist the facts. They took Arshad's video, his confession about wanting to convert to Hinduism, and suddenly it became a national story about Hindu-Muslim tensions, as we were talking about a while ago. No one stopped to think about the details. No one asked the right questions. And the media also simply ran with it, turning a horrific family murder into something far more dangerous: communal riot. The second a case breaks, the media is all over it. They rush to cover every detail, throwing out headlines before the facts are even clear. Because in Indian media, the simple mantra is, be it whatever, the news headline must be a clickbait to maintain the TRP. And that leaves us wondering, what about the victims? What about the families caught up in this mess? And most importantly, why do you think Badar actually killed his family? Why did Arshad kill his family? Even though they shared their reasons, do they sound logical to you? For example, Arshad claimed he killed his family to protect them from harassment by neighbors who, he said, targeted them for being Muslims and pressured them to convert to Hinduism. But is that really believable or logical? Even the neighbors have denied these allegations. Or do you have some more solid theories? Share your views with us in the comments. We are ready to discuss. And this is not the only case where anger, dominance, and ego blindfolded people and made them do horrible things. Watch this next video, where you see another horrible game of ego and anger, where you can't decide whose side you'd take, the killer or the victim. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more. See you soon.